Well, as it turns out, that blue SCSI does work. It was just a question of using the right file system on the SD card. So it looks like this prefers exFAT as the base file system to install the images on, rather than, I think, FAT32 that is used on the zuluscsi. So I've just installed like a small 400 megabyte test image on here. It's currently trying to install macOS 8.1, and I think it's going to succeed. But just as a heads up, try a different file system. Should have probably read the instructions before, but anyway, let's continue installing some software. So I ended up doing the installation again after I've updated the SD card. I added a zuluscsi.ini file with some configuration to make the images look a little bit more like Apple branded hard drives. I'll put a copy of that in the description of the video below so you can see what I did. That allowed me to install at least the updated drivers. So hopefully these should all show up properly as 4 gigabyte drives now. But let's address one annoying thing. Before I go ahead and do any other installations, I want to see what the state is of the floppy drive, because right now it doesn't read or write anything, doesn't eject properly, so let's take it out and see if we can fix that. Okay, so in order to take out this whole assembly with a floppy drive underneath, first power supply has to come up. So I've disconnected this from power. I've removed the zuluscsi for now. A very short cable, which doesn't leave a lot of room for maneuvering. This is mostly toolless, so there is a clip under here that connects it to the drive bracket. So what we'll do is go underneath carefully, and then I'll move that clip and lift the power supply at the same time. If it wants to come out. I didn't get the clip properly. There we go. And out it comes. This machine here mostly has, I think, tantalum or ceramic capacitors in it, so there's very little maintenance that needs to be done to this. Very different though with the power supply, I think. If we're looking in here, we'll probably open this up at some point to see if there's any electrolytics or reefer capacitors that need to be exchanged at some point. But let's put this aside. Okay, next comes the bracket, which houses all of the drives. So let's unplug the floppy emo first. And then there is supposed to be, let me take you over here. So there's supposed to be a screw down here connecting this to the logic board, but that is missing. So someone must have been in here before. But in order to get this out, we will move this clip here and then slide this forward. And then it should just come up. And then here's the floppy that we want to look at. Alright, so the things that usually fail in these drives are Of course, there is the usual degradation of grease, which might gum up the mechanism inside. Let me get that screw. Dirt on the read-write heads, which I suspect is the case here. And these are easily fixed. I'll take some IPA to take off the old grease, clean up the read-write heads, and put new grease on those components. Now, does this come up yet? And then another issue that happens is with the eject mechanism. There seems to be, in some of those models, a gear that just disintegrates and makes the eject mechanism stop working. And I can already see on the inside that there's a lot of dust and grime in it. So, how does this come out? Let's disconnect the cable carefully. You sometimes break. Ooh, dust bunnies. Yum. So you can already imagine what the inside of this might look like. But first I need to figure out how to get this out of here. Okay, so let's try this tab up here and then move it forward. Yes, I think that works. If you do have screws of different lengths and types and sizes, do keep them separate. Put them into labeled bins. Trust me, I've made that mistake many times before where I didn't know where screws go, and I've paid a bitter price for that. So the trick ended up being to insert a floppy disk, and then I used this prying tool to get in here and just start lifting up the cover because the eject button was in the way. So now that this is open, let's have another look. This should probably just slide out of here. And yeah, we can go through here with a brush or a cleaning cloth. There's some dust in here. I'll get rid of that later. All right, so some dust bunnies that we'll get rid of, and in here would be that eject mechanism. Actually, I think it's in here. So we'll take a look at that first. There's also some electrolytic capacitors down here. There's 2 of them. And I think I've seen some in the back as well. Yeah, there's at least 2 here. Those will also have to go and be replaced at some point. Oh, and I see some more in here. We'll take a closer look to see if there's any leakage already. It doesn't look like it from this perspective, but let us try and look at the gear mechanism first here and see if this is suffering from the usual. So I lift up the plate, careful to not mess with the plastic. Okay, this is usually the culprit. So you see most of them have a regular kind of whitish color. This one here has yellowed, and that is usually the one that fails. And I can see that some of the teeth seem to have deteriorated a little bit, but to the point where it actually doesn't do anything, I don't know. No. This does seem to be moving properly, so I don't know why the eject mechanism is busted. Okay, so we don't need to replace this. Let's wait with putting that back in here and give this thing a good cleaning. And I will use, okay, two types of cotton swabs. Regular cotton for most of the mechanics, and then this plastic one for the read-write heads to make sure that these leave hairs or little pieces of cotton everywhere, so I don't want these to get stuck on the read-write heads, so that's what I'll be using the plastic one for. Soak that in a little bit of IPA, and then go over some of the mechanical parts that have dust everywhere. I'm sure this is the most exciting thing that you have ever watched, so probably just speed through this real quick. Not an awful lot of dirt on the read-write head. I didn't see anything visible come off. So I hope whatever was on there and I can't see is what caused this thing to not read or write any floppies. So, well, we'll continue kind of lubricating the mechanical parts and we'll put it back together. Alright, let's give this a little test. Make sure this all works smoothly. Okay, settles down nicely. Add a little bit more grease. Clean off old grease. Add new. Okay, I think the one thing I forgot were the rails for the read-write head, so let's give that a real quick clean as well, and then we should be done. So I have this propped up in here on a bunch of plastic bits and pieces so it doesn't short anything out outside of the drive cage. I did notice I left in the sacrificial floppy disk, and it sounds like it's trying to eject that, but the eject mechanism is still not working for some reason. So if we power this up, that's exactly what it sounds like. So let's try and give it a little bit of help. Motor is still spinning. Something is not working in here. So I'll probably have to take this apart again and see if I missed anything. Alright, let's take a look into my little treasure box, the 2X, which doesn't actually contain much except for a little collection of floppy drives. And so what I can try to do is see if any of these might actually work. No idea what this is. Ooh, there seems to be a SCSI hard drive. Interesting. There's a floppy here. Now this is might be an appropriate model. 2 megabyte. So this is a high density one. As is this. Okay. Behold my super janky mechanism to keep those two apart. Yeah. Alright. Power on. Doesn't make any funky noises. It'll boot up from the SCSI to SD. Once it's there, we'll see if we can read the disk and inject it properly. Okay, we're all booted up. So let's again try to insert and read that floppy. I should have tried actually booting from it to see if that works. And it comes up right away, reads everything. Let's see if it also ejects properly. Ah, almost. Needed a little bit of help there. So I wonder if this just needs to be exercised a few more times. Yes, and eject works properly. Okay, so I think we'll put this one in there instead. Little note with state of the drive, and bye-bye. Alright, so the reason I wanted to get this floppy drive up and running is because it'll be very inconvenient for future software installations to use the floppy emo. I love the device, but since this Quadra 700 doesn't have an external floppy port, I would have to have it hooked up through the internal one all the time, which is very inconvenient since it's underneath the drive cage. It's hard to get to. So I was actually happy with how this turned out. I was able to boot from an AUX floppy boot disk that it also just ejected because it successfully booted into the installer, which I created with my little PowerBook G3 down here. So I'm hopeful that the floppy drive will actually continue to work. I'll put this back in its proper case once this is all done, clean it up nicely. But for now, let's continue to install some software. So I'm about to install AUX on here, but I'm not using the Macintosh HD drive since that is where my macOS 8 installation is. I'll be using HD2, I believe, and install new disk partitions, Mac partition, standard system software. I will choose what software I want because I'm gonna put everything on here. We have the space, why not? Basic C programming, oh yes, that would be fun. Debugging version control, so there's probably CVS in here, I would imagine. Extended C programming, actually let's see what this does. Programming utilities, source code version control, blah blah blah, okay. Macintosh programming, X client sampler, X11 server, yes. Games, of course we need games. Shell layering, okay. Install everything. God, I hope this is the non-macOS partition, so let's continue. I'll let it pick its own partitioning scheme for the drive. But hopefully, once this is done, I'll have a dual boot system, and I just have to use the launch picker to figure out from which drive to boot. And I'll have both regular macOS 8.1, I think I installed, and AUX on here, so I can switch back and forth between the two of them. Alright, the installation has completed. Took an awful long time. I don't know if there's anything interesting to install afterwards, but nope, just seems to have all the different options that we've seen at the beginning. So let's try to restart that and explore the system a little bit, which is I think what it's going to do now. Now I'm also curious if this is going to start right into AUX or back into macOS 8. Whoops, illegal instruction. Okay. I wonder if I installed AUX over macOS 8. Let's see what happens. Might have gotten my drives confused on here. Huh, no, it's starting up fine now. So this booted fine into macOS 8.1. Let's see if there is a boot picker. Oh, here, startup disks. Okay, so let's see. Macintosh HD, Mac partition would be the other one. So let's try to restart and see if that is what gets it booted into AUX. The Unix partition itself, whatever it created, doesn't seem to be available. Okay, that looks more like the AUX startup screen. So I wonder what happened to the macOS one. I'll see if I can repair that later. So this is booting into a basic macOS 7 something installation, which serves as a bootloader for AUX. But after that, AUX should take over. Alright, there we have the AUX desktop. This is the root partition, which I think is the one that we can't see anymore when we boot into macOS 8. And it says about 2 gigabytes available. So yes, I picked the correct one, the 2 gigabyte partition on the zuluscsi. Macintosh HD, that would be the 4 gigabyte one for macOS 8. We'll repair that later. And then we have 3, 4, 5. So 3 empty ones, 4 gigabytes each left to put all sorts of crap on here. Probably never use it, but that was one of the smaller SD cards that I could find for this experiment. What interesting applications do we have here? One that I'm definitely interested in exploring is Quadra 700, memory 20 megabytes, system software 700. What I would like to open is a terminal. But where is that stuff? And I think I found it right up here. Oops. Command shell would be where it's at, I hope. Come on, do it. Launch it. There we go. I don't know why it's not launching into a shell right away when you open it. But let's see. Oh dear, I am logged in as root. That's probably not good. We can go through and create some more new users. I wonder how that will deal with how you log into the system, through which prompt. So that should be fun. Yep, so this works. Let's get back, repair macOS 8. And before we play around with this a little bit more, I think we'll wrap up this specific video. Alright, so this is now nicely booting back into macOS 8.1, and I also get the dual boot to work by just using a different drive to boot from. The floppy drive is a different one now, but that seems to be up and running. It reads, writes disks correctly, ejects them now, so that was mostly just stuck grease on the mechanism. The old one has a drive motor issue somewhere, so I'll tuck that away for later repairs. But I think we're in a good state now to start some more experimentation, upgrades, installing of software, to play around with this Quadra 700. But that's for another video. For now, we'll wrap this up. Thank you for watching.